The arena floor was slick with alien blood, and the crowd's roar echoed through the massive amphitheater like thunder. Commander Sarah Chen pressed herself against the cold metal bars of her cell, watching as another gladiator fell to the Korthak champion. The creature stood 12 feet tall, its forearms dripping with the fluorescent green ichor of its latest victim. Its mandibles clicked in what she had learned was the equivalent of laughter among its kind. 3 months. 3 months since the ambush that had destroyed her reconnaissance ship and landed her in this nightmare. 3 months of watching alien warriors die for the entertainment of the hegemony's elite. 3 months of being told she was next. The Korthak champion, Veltar the Destroyer, raised all 4 of its arms to the crowd. The audience was a mixture of species from across the galactic hegemony, tall, elegant Etheri with their crystalline skin, bulky Gromok traders with their tusked faces, and countless others. All of them had come to watch death for sport. Magnificent, isn't it? The voice belonged to Overseer Zexai, a serpentine slith whose scales shimmered with bioluminescent patterns. Veltar has not lost a single combat in 2 cycles. 47 kills to his name. Sarah didn't respond. She had learned that silence often served her better than words in this place. The Overseer seemed to take pleasure in her defiance, but she wouldn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. Your turn approaches, human, Zexai continued, his forked tongue tasting the air. The crowd grows curious about your species. We have heard such interesting stories from the Outer Rim. What stories? The question slipped out before Sarah could stop herself. The alien's laugh was like steam escaping from a pipe. Oh, she speaks. How delightful. The stories, dear human, speak of a species that refuses to yield. That fights against impossible odds. That somehow manages to survive where others perish. His head tilted at an unnatural angle. But, looking at you, so small and fragile, I find these tales difficult to believe. Sarah's jaw tightened. She was 5 feet 6 inches of compact muscle, hardened by years of military training and combat experience. But, compared to most of the species in the hegemony, humans were indeed small. What they lacked in size, they made up for in other ways these aliens had yet to discover. The arena floor was being cleared of the latest victims' remains. Maintenance drones, small floating units with multiple manipulator arms, worked efficiently to prepare the space for the next bout. The crowd's excitement was building again. Tell me about your world, Zexai said suddenly. What is this Earth like? Why do you care? Curiosity. Your people are new to our awareness. The ship we captured you from was far beyond what we expected from a primitive species. Your weapons, while crude, were surprisingly effective against our scouts. Sarah felt a flicker of hope. If they were calling human weapons crude but effective, then perhaps the war wasn't going as badly for humanity as she had feared. When the hegemony had first made contact 6 months ago, it had been with overwhelming force and demands for immediate surrender. Earth's response had been predictably human, a polite decline followed by rapid militarization. The gladiatorial games serve multiple purposes, the Overseer continued. Entertainment, yes, but also intelligence gathering. We learn about the capabilities of various species by watching them fight. Their strengths, their weaknesses, their breaking points. And, what have you learned about humans? That you bleed red instead of the more sensible colors other species have adopted. That you are remarkably fragile. That you heal more slowly than most. He paused, studying her through the bars. But, also that you observe. You learn. You adapt. Even now, you are cataloging every detail of this conversation, aren't you? He was right. Sarah had been unconsciously mapping the guard rotations, noting the security protocols, observing the behavioral patterns of different species. It was ingrained military training, but it was also something more fundamental, human curiosity and the drive to survive. The arena announcer, a floating sphere with multiple voice projectors, began introducing the next combatants. The crowd's attention shifted away from Sarah's cell block. 2 cycles from now, Zexai said quietly, you will face Veltar. I suggest you spend the time wisely. Perhaps pray to whatever deities your species recognizes. After he left, Sarah slumped against the back wall of her cell. 2 days to prepare for a fight against a creature that outweighed her by at least 400 pounds and had 4 arms to her too. The smart play would be to use her speed, but the arena was small enough that her mobility advantage would be limited. She closed her eyes and began running through tactical scenarios. Her military training had included hand-to-hand combat against multiple opponents, but those had been human opponents. This would be different. A soft sound made her open her eyes. In the cell across from hers, another prisoner was watching her. This one was unlike any species she had encountered before, roughly humanoid but with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes that seemed to hold depths of intelligence. It was small, perhaps even smaller than Sarah, but moved with fluid grace. "You are the human," it said in accented but clear standard galactic. "I am Kiptai of the Zarathi. Sarah Chen, Earth Defense Force. I have heard of your species. The reports that reach even our distant worlds speak of remarkable tenacity." Kiptai moved closer to the bars separating their cells. "Tell me, is it true that humans have never surrendered a planet?" "Not yet," Sarah replied grimly. "Though to be fair, we've only had planets for about 300 years, and this war started 6 months ago." 6 months, the alien mused. "And yet you are here, captured in deep space, far from your homeworld. Your people pushed the boundaries quickly. What do you know about the war?" Kiptai's large eyes seemed to glow slightly in the dim light. "More than the hegemony would prefer. My people are observers. We watch. We listen. We remember." The alien glanced around cautiously before continuing. "The hegemony expected your species to surrender immediately, as most do when faced with their vast fleets. Instead, your people have been giving them what I believe you call a bloody nose." Sarah felt a surge of pride mixed with hope. "How bad are our losses?" "Bad. But theirs are worse. Your species fights differently than others. Most civilizations that join the hegemony do so because the alternative is extinction. They submit to preserve their people and their culture, accepting integration into the larger galactic community." Kiptai paused. "Humans appear to have a different philosophy." "We don't like bullies," Sarah said simply. "Yes, I am beginning to understand this. Your ships are smaller and less advanced, but they attack in ways the hegemony has not encountered before. Unpredictable tactics. Suicide runs. Boarding actions when any sane species would retreat." The alien's head tilted curiously. "Your people seem to view impossible odds as merely challenging rather than insurmountable." The conversation was interrupted by a commotion from the arena. A new fighter was being introduced, a massive, armored creature that the crowd seemed to recognize. The cheers were deafening. "Gorith the Unmovable," Kiptai said quietly. "A legend even among gladiators. No one has ever managed to knock him down, let alone defeat him." Sarah studied the new arrival. The creature looked like a walking tank, covered in natural armor plating that seemed to absorb the arena lights. Its movements were slow but deliberate, each step shaking the ground. "Who's he fighting?" Before Kiptai could answer, the arena announcer's voice boomed through the speakers, and, facing Gorith the Unmovable, a mystery challenger from the outer rim. The crowd fell silent as a gate opened on the opposite side of the arena. What emerged made Sarah's blood freeze. It was a human. Male, tall and lean, wearing mismatched armor that looked like it had been scavenged from a dozen different sources. His hair was longer than military regulation, and a beard covered his face, but there was something about the way he moved that seemed familiar. "That can't be him," Sarah whispered, pressing against the bars. The human in the arena moved with casual confidence, seemingly unbothered by the size of his opponent or the roar of the crowd. He carried a simple metal staff, crude compared to the energy weapons most gladiators used, but he handled it with obvious expertise. Kiptai looked between Sarah and the arena. "You know this human?" Sarah couldn't speak. The fighter below was supposed to be dead. She had seen his ship destroy herself, had watched the explosion tear through space as hegemony fighters swarmed their convoy. There was no way Marcus Kane could have survived. But there he was, alive and apparently thriving in the most dangerous arena in hegemony space. The battle began without ceremony. Gorath charged forward, his massive bulk building momentum like a runaway starship. The human, Marcus, it had to be Marcus, waited until the last possible second before moving. He didn't dodge to either side as expected. Instead, he dove forward, rolling under Gorath's charge and coming up behind the massive alien. The crowd gasped as the human staff struck precisely at a joint in Gorath's armor. The big alien stumbled but didn't fall. He spun with surprising speed, one massive fist whistling through the air where the human's head had been a moment before. What followed was less a fight than a demonstration. The human moved like liquid mercury, flowing around Gorath's attacks while landing precise strikes at vulnerable points. Each blow seemed carefully calculated, not for maximum damage but for cumulative effect. He was dismantling his opponent piece by piece, joint by joint. Remarkable, Kiptai breathed. I have never seen such precision. Sarah watched in amazement as Marcus systematically exploited every weakness in Gorath's seemingly impenetrable defense. She had sparred with him hundreds of times during their academy days, and his style hadn't changed, patient, analytical, absolutely relentless. He was taking apart a creature that outweighed him by more than 1,000 pounds. The end came suddenly. Gorath, frustrated and off balance from dozens of precise strikes, overcommit to a massive overhead slam. Marcus sidestepped and drove his staff upward with surgical precision, finding the one gap in the armor at the base of Gorath's skull. The massive alien collapsed like a demolished building. The arena fell silent. Then, slowly, the cheers began. Not the bloodthirsty roar that usually accompanied victories, but something different, respect, perhaps even awe. Marcus stood over his fallen opponent, staff held ready in case Gorath wasn't truly down. When it became clear the fight was over, he straightened and looked around the arena with calm assessment. For just a moment, his eyes met Sarah's across the distance. He winked. The crowd was on its feet now, chanting something in the hegemony's common tongue. Even the Etheri, normally reserved in their emotions, were showing animation. What are they saying? Sarah asked. Kiptai listened for a moment before answering. They are calling him Ghostwalker, one who moves between life and death without being touched by either. The alien looked thoughtful. It is not a title given lightly. In their culture, it implies someone who has transcended normal physical limitations. Sarah watched as Marcus was escorted from the arena by a full squad of guards. Even now, surrounded and supposedly defeated, he moved with the same easy confidence. He was planning something. She knew that look. Your friend has created quite a stir, Kiptai observed. Gorath had not lost a fight in 12 cycles. The betting houses will be in chaos. He's not just my friend, Sarah said quietly. He's the best tactical mind in the Earth Defense Force. If Marcus Kane is here and he's planning something, then this whole facility is in danger. One human against the entire gladiatorial complex? Thousands of guards, automated defenses, orbital security platforms? Kiptai's expression was skeptical. Your confidence in your species is admirable, but surely even humans have limits. Sarah thought about that for a moment. Did they? In the past 6 months, humanity had surprised everyone, including themselves, with what they were capable of when pushed. They had turned defeat into victory more times than should have been statistically possible. They had made the hegemony, masters of 1,000 worlds, actually worry about the outcome of a war. Maybe, she said finally. But I wouldn't bet against him. And I definitely wouldn't bet against him when he's angry. The arena was being cleared again. Tomorrow would bring new fights, new spectacles for the crowd. But Sarah had the feeling that everything was about to change. Marcus Kane was here, alive and clearly planning something. As night fell over the gladiatorial complex, Sarah began her own preparations. If Marcus was making a move, she needed to be ready to help. The guards would expect her to be demoralized by the prospect of facing Veltar in 2 days. Instead, she felt energized. The hegemony had made a mistake bringing humans to their arena. They thought they were importing entertainment. What they had actually done was give 2 of Earth's most dangerous soldiers a close look at their security systems and an inside view of their most prized facility. Sarah smiled for the first time in months. The hegemony was about to learn why humans had a reputation for turning impossible odds into merely challenging ones. In the darkness of her cell, she began planning. 2 days until her fight with Veltar. But she had a feeling the arena would see a very different kind of combat before then. The Ghost Walker had arrived, and things were about to get interesting. The arena buzzed with excitement the next morning as news of the previous day's upset spread throughout the complex. Sarah watched from her cell as maintenance crews worked to repair damage from Goratha's fall. The massive alien had cracked the arena floor when he collapsed. The betting houses had indeed gone into chaos, with many species losing fortunes they had wagered on what seemed like a sure thing. Marcus was nowhere to be seen. After his victory, he had been taken to what Kiptai called the Champion's Quarters, better accommodations reserved for gladiators who had proven their worth. It was both a reward and a more sophisticated form of imprisonment. "He requests audience with you," came a voice from behind Sarah. She turned to see a new guard, this one a Gromok with the ceremonial scarring that marked him as elite caste. His tusked face was unreadable, but there was something in his small eyes that seemed almost respectful. "Who requests audience?" "The Ghost Walker. He has earned certain privileges with his victory. A brief meeting with another of his species has been approved." Sarah's heart raced. This could be the opportunity she had been hoping for. "When?" "Now. You will be escorted to the neutral meeting chamber. Any attempt at escape or violence will result in immediate termination for both of you." The neutral meeting chamber turned out to be a small room with clear walls on all sides, allowing guards to observe from multiple angles. Marcus was already there when Sarah arrived, sitting casually at a metal table as if he were in a coffee shop rather than a prison. He looked older than she remembered, with new scars on his arms and a hardness around his eyes that hadn't been there before. "Sarah Chen," he said with a slight smile. "You look terrible." Despite everything, she almost laughed. 3 months of prison food will do that to you. You, on the other hand, look like you've been on vacation. Funny how perspective changes things." Marcus gestured to the chairs around them. 24-hour observation, directional microphones, probably pheromone scanners and stress analysis equipment. They're going to analyze every word we say. "Then, we better make it interesting," Sarah replied, sitting across from him. "Tell me about Earth," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly to the listening devices. "I've been out of touch for a while." Sarah understood. He wanted current intelligence, but they had to speak as if they were simply two humans sharing news from home. "The war isn't going well. We're losing ships faster than we can build them. The hegemony's technology advantage is significant. But we're still fighting. Oh yes. Admiral Rodriguez sends her regards, by the way." Sarah watched Marcus's eyes carefully. Rodriguez had been killed in the same battle where Marcus's ship was destroyed. If he was really Marcus, he would know that. His expression didn't change, but she saw his left hand tap twice on the table, the old Academy signal for understood. He was telling her that he knew she was testing him, and that he knew Rodriguez was dead. "How's the old neighborhood?" Marcus asked. "Same as always. Stubborn residents who don't like being told what to do by people with bigger guns." Sarah leaned forward slightly. "Although I heard there was some construction work being done. New foundations being laid." Marcus nodded slowly. In their old code, foundations meant strategic planning. Earth was developing new tactics or technologies. "That's good to hear. I always thought the neighborhood could use some renovation." He glanced around the room as if admiring the architecture. "This place, on the other hand, seems very well established. Old systems, traditional approaches. Probably hasn't changed much in centuries." Sarah caught his meaning. The gladiatorial complex was vulnerable because it relied on outdated security protocols. Marcus was already analyzing their weaknesses. "How did you end up here?" she asked. "Wrong place, wrong time. My ship had some mechanical problems and I ended up stranded. The locals were very helpful, they gave me room and board in exchange for some light entertainment work." His smile was grim. "I've gotten fairly good at entertaining people." Sarah tried to imagine what Marcus had been through to reach this point. 3 months of fighting for his life while she had been sitting in a cell. No wonder he looked harder. "The work suits you," she said. "I saw your performance yesterday. Very thorough. Thank you. I've learned a lot about the local entertainment preferences. They like spectacle, but they also appreciate technique. The key is understanding what motivates different audiences." He was telling her that he had figured out how the various alien species thought and reacted. That was Marcus, always the tactician, always looking for psychological advantages. "Speaking of entertainment," Sarah said carefully, "I understand I'm scheduled for a performance soon." "Yes, I heard." "Veltar the Destroyer." Marcus's expression grew serious. "He's good. Very good. For arms, natural armor plating, reach advantage, and excellent reflexes. He's also smart, he learns from watching other fights." "Any suggestions?" Marcus glanced at the guards watching them and spoke loudly enough for the microphones to catch every word. "Stay mobile. Use your speed. Don't try to match his strength, you'll lose. Look for patterns in his attack sequences. He favors a high-low combination with his upper arms followed by a grab with his lower arms. If you can predict it, you can counter it." Sarah nodded, memorizing every detail. But she also watched Marcus's hands, which were moving in subtle gestures below the table. In their old academy hand signals, he was spelling out, "Tomorrow night. Be ready. Trust me." "Time is up," announced the Gromot guard. "The Ghost Walker must return to his quarters." As Marcus stood to leave, he looked directly at Sarah. "Take care of yourself, Chen. And, remember, sometimes the best defense is making sure your opponent has other things to worry about." After he left, Sarah was escorted back to her cell. Kiptai was waiting, clearly curious about the meeting. "Your friend seemed confident," the Zarathi observed. "Marcus is always confident. It's one of his most annoying traits." Sarah sat on her narrow bunk and thought about what he had told her. Tomorrow night. Be ready. But, ready for what? The rest of the day passed slowly. Sarah exercised in her cell, maintaining her conditioning while observing the guard rotations and security procedures. The complex ran like clockwork, shifts changed precisely on schedule, patrols followed predetermined routes, and even the maintenance drones operated according to strict programming. That night, as the arena fell quiet and most of the facility settled into its rest cycle, Sarah noticed something unusual. The guard posts around the champion's quarters seemed to be experiencing technical difficulties. Security feeds flickered, went dark for brief periods, then came back online. Each time, the guards checked their equipment and assumed temporary malfunctions. Marcus was already at work. The next day brought new excitement to the arena. Word had spread throughout hegemony space about the human who had defeated Gorath, and attendance was at record levels. Representatives from multiple worlds had arrived to witness what they hoped would be another spectacular upset. Sarah's own upcoming fight had also generated interest. The novelty of seeing two humans in the arena within days of each other was unprecedented, and betting was heavy on both the outcome and the manner of her defeat. The crowd expects you to die quickly, Sex-High informed her during his morning visit. Veltar's last 3 opponents lasted less than 5 minutes combined. But some are betting that human stubbornness might extend the entertainment value. How comforting, Sarah replied. Indeed. I confess, I am curious myself. Your species continues to confound our expectations. The overseer's scales shimmered with what she had learned indicated amusement. Perhaps today we will finally see the limits of human adaptability. After he left, Sarah continued her preparations. She had been thinking about Marcus's advice, but also about his signal to be ready. Whatever he was planning would happen tonight, which meant she needed to survive her fight with Veltar. The afternoon brought a parade of preliminary fights designed to warm up the crowd. Sarah watched each one, not for entertainment but for tactical intelligence. She studied how different species moved, how they attacked, how they defended. She also watched the crowd's reactions and the security responses to various situations. As evening approached, the arena reached a fever pitch of excitement. Sarah could hear the crowd from her cell, their voices rising and falling like ocean waves. The air itself seemed charged with anticipation. "They are calling for you," Kiptai said quietly. "Your time has come." Sarah stood and checked her equipment one final time. The arena provided only basic protective gear, a simple chestplate and arm guards. Weapons were limited to what was available in the arena armory, all designed to provide entertainment rather than efficient killing. "Kiptai," she said as the guards approached her cell. "If I don't make it back, I want you to know, whatever happens tonight, don't be afraid. Trust the humans." The Zarafi's large eyes widened. "What are you planning?" "Not me. Him. And, knowing Marcus, it's going to be spectacular." The walk to the arena felt both endless and far too short. The roar of the crowd grew louder with each step, until it was almost overwhelming. Sarah had never fought in front of an audience before. Her military combat experience had been in the cold silence of space or the controlled chaos of boarding actions. The arena floor was larger than it appeared from her cell. Under the harsh lights, every grain of sand was visible, along with dark stains from previous battles. Veltar was already waiting in the center, his forearms moving in complex patterns that she realized were some kind of intimidation display. He was even more impressive up close. The natural armor plating that covered his body looked like it could stop small arms fire, and his multiple limbs moved with coordinated precision. His mandibles clicked constantly, a sound that somehow managed to be heard over the crowd noise. Sarah selected her weapons from the available rack, a short spear for reach and a curved knife for close work. Both were simple metal, without the energy enhancement that more advanced gladiators earned through victories. The arena announcer's voice boomed across the space, introducing both fighters to the crowd. Sarah heard her name and species called out, followed by a recitation of Veltar's impressive record. 47 kills. No defeats. She looked up into the crowd and found Marcus in the champions section. He was watching intently, but she noticed his hands were moving slightly. More signals, too subtle for anyone else to notice. "Survive," he spelled out. "Keep him busy. Fireworks coming." Fireworks. That was their old code for explosions. The signal to begin came without ceremony. Veltar immediately charged forward, all four arms working in the pattern Marcus had described, high attacks followed by low grabs. Sarah used her spear to parry the upper strikes while dancing away from the grasping lower limbs. The Korthak was fast for his size, but Sarah was faster. She stayed mobile, using the full arena space while landing quick strikes with her spear tip. None of them penetrated his armor, but they served to frustrate him and keep him off balance. The crowd was enjoying the spectacle. They had expected a quick execution, but instead they were seeing an extended chase scene. Sarah could feel their excitement building as she continued to evade Veltar's increasingly aggressive attacks. Minutes passed. Sarah was tiring, but so was her opponent. The constant attacks were taking their toll on the larger alien, and his movements were becoming slightly less coordinated. She began to press her advantage, using her knife to target the joints in his armor where the protection was thinner. That was when the lights went out. The arena plunged into complete darkness as the main power grid failed. Emergency lighting flickered on, then died as well. In the span of seconds, the massive complex went from blazing illumination to pitch black. The crowd's excitement turned to confusion, then alarm. Sarah heard Veltar's confused clicking somewhere in the darkness near her, but she didn't move. Marcus had said fireworks were coming. The explosions began 30 seconds later. The first blast came from the direction of the main armory, a brilliant flash that lit up the arena for a split second. Then, another from the guard barracks. Then, a third from what Sarah thought might be the vehicle depot. The crowd was panicking now. In the intermittent light from the explosions, Sarah could see alien species fleeing in all directions. The carefully organized seating areas had become chaotic masses of bodies pushing toward the exits. More explosions followed in rapid succession. Sarah realized that Marcus had somehow gained access to the facility's entire explosive inventory and was systematically destroying every strategic target in the complex. The demolitions were too precise and too well coordinated to be anything but military planning. In the chaos, she felt a hand grab her arm. "This way," Marcus's voice said quietly. "How did you later move?" They ran through the darkness together, navigating by memory and the light from continuing explosions. Behind them, Sarah could hear Veltar roaring in frustration and confusion. The Korthak was probably as lost as everyone else. Marcus led her through a series of corridors that she hadn't known existed. Emergency doors had been forced open, security checkpoints were abandoned, and the few guards they encountered were too busy dealing with the facility-wide crisis to pay attention to two figures moving through the shadows. "The detention level," Marcus explained as they ran. "I've been mapping this place for 3 days. Every corridor, every security protocol, every weakness." They reached the cell block to find it in chaos. Emergency power had failed here too, and the automated systems had defaulted to a lockdown mode that kept all cells sealed. But Marcus produced a small device that made quick work of the electronic locks. "Kiptai," Sarah called into the darkness. "Here." The Zorathi's voice came from nearby. "What is happening?" "Jailbreak," Marcus said simply. "Anyone who wants to leave, now's the time." Within minutes, they had freed every prisoner in the block. Most were gladiators from various species, all dangerous fighters who had been captured or enslaved. The group that emerged from the detention level was small but formidable. "The docking bays," Marcus said, consulting a crude map he had drawn. "There are ships there, nothing fancy, but enough to get us out of the system." They moved as a group through corridors filled with smoke and emergency lighting. The explosions had stopped, but fires were burning throughout the complex. The automated fire suppression systems seemed to have failed along with everything else. "How did you manage all this?" Sarah asked as they navigated around a collapsed ceiling. 3 months of careful observation," Marcus replied. "Plus some help from friends who taught me about the local technology. Turns out the hegemony builds everything to last for centuries, which means they rarely update their security systems. Very predictable vulnerabilities." They reached the docking bay to find it largely deserted. The handful of guards had apparently fled when the explosions started. Dozens of small ships sat in orderly rows, personal transports, cargo haulers, and a few military escorts. "That one," Marcus pointed to a sleek vessel near the back. Ethery design, fast engines, and enough range to reach neutral space. As they approached the ship, Kiptai grabbed Sarah's arm. "Wait. This is too easy. Why would they leave the docking bay unguarded?" Marcus paused, considering. "Because they're not worried about us stealing ships. They're worried about us getting off the planet." As if summoned by his words, the sound of military engines filled the air. Through the bay's atmospheric shield, Sarah could see lights descending from orbit, hegemony warships responding to the crisis. "Orbital blockade," one of the other freed prisoners said grimly. "No one leaves without their permission." Sarah looked at the approaching ships, then at Marcus. "Please tell me you have a plan for this too." His smile was the same one she remembered from their academy days, the expression he got when he was about to attempt something that should have been impossible. "Actually, I do. But you're not going to like it." The warships were getting closer, their searchlights beginning to sweep the complex. Whatever Marcus had in mind, they were running out of time to implement it. "What's the plan?" Sarah asked. "We're going to do something so crazy that even humans would think twice about it," Marcus replied. "We're going to ram our way through their blockade and broadcast a message to every ship in hegemony space." "What message?" Marcus was already moving toward the Ethery ship, gesturing for the others to follow. "That the humans have officially arrived, and we're not going quietly." As they boarded the vessel, Sarah realized that Marcus hadn't just been planning an escape. He had been planning to send a message that would reach across the galaxy, a declaration that humanity would not be broken, would not be enslaved, and would not surrender no matter what the odds. The hegemony had wanted to study human capabilities in their arena. They were about to get a demonstration they would never forget. The Ethery ship hummed to life with a musical tone that vibrated through the deck plates. Marcus's hands moved across the crystalline control interface with surprising familiarity, bringing systems online in rapid sequence. The freed prisoners strapped themselves into acceleration couches while Sarah took the co-pilot position. "Since when do you speak Ethery?" she asked, watching him navigate the alien control systems. "Since I spent 2 weeks in a cell next to an Ethery engineer who was very chatty about his people's technology." Marcus's fingers danced over holographic displays. "Turns out they love to talk about their ships almost as much as they love building them." Through the viewport, the orbital blockade was taking shape. At least a dozen hegemony warships had moved into position around the planet, their weapon systems powered and ready. The smallest of them could have reduced their stolen transport to atoms with a single shot. "Marcus," Sarah said quietly, "there's no way we can fight our way through that." "You're absolutely right," he replied. "Which is why we're not going to fight them." The ship lifted smoothly from the docking bay, its gravity generators adjusting to maintain stable orientation. Marcus guided them up through the planet's atmosphere while monitoring the communication channels. The hegemony fleet was coordinating their positions, confident that any escape attempt would be easily stopped. "Unknown vessel, you are ordered to return to the surface immediately," came a transmission in Standard Galactic. "Any attempt to flee will result in your destruction." Marcus opened a return channel. "Hegemony Fleet, this is Commander Marcus Kane of the Earth Defense Force. I'm afraid I can't comply with that request." There was a pause before the response came. "Commander Kane, you are piloting a stolen vessel with escaped prisoners aboard. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick." "Counterproposal," Marcus replied calmly. "You let us go, and I won't broadcast the sensor logs from your arena complex to every news network in hegemony space." Another pause, longer this time. Sarah could imagine the fleet commanders consulting with their superiors, trying to understand what the human was threatening. "You have no sensor logs, Commander. Our security systems were destroyed in your sabotage." Marcus smiled. "True, your systems were destroyed. But Ethery ships are required by their homeworld's law to maintain detailed sensor records for insurance purposes. This particular vessel has been documenting everything that happened in that arena for the past 3 months." Sarah stared at him. "You planned this from the beginning." "Not exactly. But I did make sure to steal the one ship that would have recorded evidence of what the hegemony has been doing to prisoners of war." Marcus's expression hardened. War crimes tend to be bad for public relations, even in an empire. The communication channel crackled with activity as the hegemony commanders tried to process this development. The gladiatorial games were technically legal under hegemony law, but forcing prisoners of war to fight for entertainment violated several interstellar conventions that even the hegemony claimed to observe. "You are bluffing," came the eventual response. "Am I?" Marcus began uploading files to an open broadcast channel. "These are just the highlight reels. I have hours of footage showing hegemony officers forcing captured military personnel to fight to the death for the entertainment of civilian audiences." The sensor logs began playing on every communication device in the system. Even from their ship, Sarah could see the video feeds displaying on the hull screens of nearby vessels. The footage was damning, clear evidence of systematic abuse of prisoners, including detailed shots of Overseer Zexhai and other officials orchestrating the games. "My personal favorite," Marcus continued, "is the segment showing your overseer explaining how the games serve as intelligence-gathering operations. I believe his exact words were, 'We learn about the capabilities of various species by watching them fight.' Very enlightening for war crimes tribunals." The fleet's response was immediate. Weapon systems that had been targeting their ship suddenly powered down. The blockade formation began to shift, creating gaps in their coverage. "Unknown vessel," came a new voice, older and more authoritative. "This is Fleet Admiral Zorkath. You will cease this broadcast immediately." "I'm afraid I can't do that, Admiral. This information is already propagating through subspace networks across a dozen sectors. By tomorrow, every news organization in hegemony space will have copies." Marcus checked their position relative to the planetary gravity well. "But I am willing to discuss terms." "Terms?" "Safe passage for this vessel and everyone aboard. In exchange, I'll provide you with detailed intelligence about human military capabilities that your strategists have been desperately seeking. Sarah looked at him in alarm, but Marcus held up a hand to indicate he wasn't serious about betraying Earth. You would betray your own species? Admiral Zorketh asked. Admiral, after 3 months in your arena, I've learned that survival sometimes requires difficult choices. Besides, Marcus's voice took on a harder edge, my loyalty is to the humans on this ship right now. Earth made no effort to rescue us. It wasn't true, of course. Sarah knew that rescue missions had been attempted, but the deep space location of the arena complex had made them impossible. But the hegemony commanders wouldn't know that. What intelligence do you offer? Marcus transmitted a data package that Sarah recognized as technical specifications for Earth's older fighter designs, ships that had been obsolete for months. Engineering details, tactical manuals, strategic assessments. Everything your people have been trying to capture since the war began. There was another long pause while the Admiral presumably consulted with his staff. Sarah could see the internal debate playing out on the fleet communications. Prosecuting escaped prisoners was one thing, but acquiring strategic intelligence was another. Very well, Commander Kane. You have safe passage to the edge of the system. But understand that if you attempt to return to human space, we will be watching. Understood, Admiral. Thank you for your cooperation. Their ship accelerated away from the planet, passing through the reorganized blockade without interference. Several of the freed prisoners were staring at Marcus with expressions ranging from admiration to horror. You actually convinced them to let us go, Kiptai said wonderingly. But, at what cost? You have given them intelligence about your people's military. Marcus waited until they were clear of the hegemony sensor range before responding. Actually, I gave them detailed plans for fighters that were retired from service 4 months ago, tactical manuals for strategies we haven't used since the war's first week, and strategic assessments that were deliberately inaccurate to begin with. Sarah laughed despite their situation. Disinformation? The oldest trick in the book. Sometimes the best intelligence you can give an enemy is intelligence that will lead them to make bad decisions. Marcus began plotting their course to neutral space. Those fighter specs will have them redesigning their defense systems to counter capabilities we abandoned long ago. They flew in comfortable silence for several hours, putting distance between themselves and the hegemony fleet. The other prisoners gradually relaxed as it became clear they had actually escaped. But Sarah noticed that Marcus remained tense, constantly monitoring their sensors and communication channels. What aren't you telling me? She finally asked. That escape was the easy part, Marcus replied quietly. Getting back to human space is going to be much more difficult. He was right. They were in the heart of hegemony territory, thousands of light years from the nearest human outpost. Their ship was fast but lacked the range for such a journey, and every major route back to Earth would be heavily monitored. So what's the plan? We're going to take the scenic route. There's a network of independent worlds along the galactic rim, species that have managed to stay neutral in the conflict. If we can reach them, they might be willing to help us get home. Kiptai spoke up from his position near the navigation station. My people maintain trading posts along that route. The Zarathi have no love for the hegemony's expansionist policies. We would be willing to assist. And I know smuggling routes that could bypass hegemony patrols, added another freed prisoner, a reptilian Sorek whose scales bore the ritual scarring of a ship captain. For a price. Marcus nodded. Then, we have a plan. It's not elegant, but it should work. Over the next several days, their makeshift crew worked together to modify the ship for the long journey. The Ethery vessel was well designed but not intended for extended operations in hostile space. They jury-rigged additional shielding, installed backup life support systems, and programmed new navigation routes that would take them through the least monitored sectors. Sarah found herself impressed by the diverse group they had assembled. Each species brought different skills and knowledge, and, despite their varied backgrounds, they worked together with the efficiency of a trained crew. It reminded her of humanity's own tendency to forge alliances in difficult circumstances. Your species has an interesting effect on others, Kiptai observed during one of their rest periods. I have never seen such cooperation between former enemies. Former enemies? Several of these individuals were captured fighting each other before they ended up in the arena. The Sorek and the Morthak have been at war for decades. Yet now they work together without question. Sarah considered this. Maybe facing death together changes perspectives. Perhaps. Or perhaps humans provide a different model for how conflicts can be resolved. The Zorathi's large eyes studied her carefully. Your people seem to believe that enemies can become allies if the circumstances are right. It was an interesting observation. Sarah thought about Earth's history, how nations that had been bitter enemies had eventually become close allies when faced with common threats. Maybe that was another human trait that the galaxy hadn't encountered before. The journey to neutral space took 2 weeks, during which they encountered 3 hegemony patrol squadrons. Each time, Marcus's combination of clever routing and creative explanations got them through without incident. The forged identification codes that the Sorek captain provided helped, but it was Marcus's understanding of hegemony psychology that made the difference. They expect compliance, he explained after their 3rd encounter. Act confident but not hostile, provide reasonable explanations for unusual activity, and, most importantly, never seem like you're hiding something important. Finally, they reached the first neutral world, a small trading post operated by a consortium of independent species. The planet's orbital traffic control was notably relaxed compared to hegemony space, and their ship was granted landing permission without extensive questioning. The trading post was a sprawling complex of docking bays, commercial districts, and diplomatic quarters. Representatives from dozens of species moved through the corridors, conducting business and gathering information. It was chaotic but also vibrant in a way that Sarah hadn't seen in hegemony space. News travels fast out here, the Sorek captain observed, monitoring local communication networks. There are already reports about the arena incident. The story is spreading. Marcus checked the broadcasts and nodded grimly. The hegemony is trying to control the narrative, but the sensor logs are too detailed to dismiss as fabrications. He paused. This is going to have political consequences. He was right. Over the following days, as they arranged passage toward human space, they watched the story unfold across galactic news networks. Several hegemony member species were demanding investigations into prisoner treatment. Anti-war protests were breaking out on multiple worlds. The Empire's careful image of civilized governance was cracking under scrutiny. You realize what you've done, don't you? Sarah asked Marcus as they waited for their transport arrangements to be finalized. Started a war? The war was already started. You might have just changed how it's going to end. Marcus looked out through the trading post's transparent aluminum windows at the stars beyond. The hegemony's strength comes from the belief that they're inevitable. That resistance is futile because their victory is assured. He turned back to her. But if people start to see that they're not invincible, that they make mistakes and can be embarrassed, then others might start fighting back too. Exactly. Humans aren't the only species that values freedom. We're just the first ones crazy enough to fight for it against impossible odds. Their transport finally arrived, a Zorathi merchant vessel with diplomatic immunity and a captain who owed Kiptai several favors. The journey to human space would take another 3 weeks, but they would be traveling under neutral flags through routes that the hegemony rarely monitored. As their ship departed the trading post, Sarah watched the stars shift outside the viewport. They were going home. After months of captivity and weeks of uncertainty, they were finally heading back to Earth. But she knew that the war would be different when they arrived. The arena incident had shown the galaxy that humans could not only survive impossible situations but turn them into victories. More importantly, it had shown other species that the hegemony could be challenged. What do you think happens next? She asked Marcus. Next, we get home and report what we've learned about hegemony capabilities and psychology. Then, we start planning how to use that information. Marcus's expression was thoughtful. The arena was supposed to be their way of studying us. Instead, it became our way of studying them. And what did we learn? That they're not as unified as they appear. that their member species have doubts about the Empire's methods, that their strength depends on maintaining an image of invincibility. Marcus smiled. And that sometimes, the best way to win a war is to make your enemies question whether they should be fighting it in the first place. Sarah nodded, understanding. The escape from the arena had been dramatic, but it was the political aftermath that would determine its true significance. The hegemony had wanted to demonstrate human weakness by forcing them to fight as gladiators. Instead, they had given humanity a platform to demonstrate their resourcefulness, their refusal to surrender, and their ability to turn any situation to their advantage. The captive human had stepped forward, and the galaxy had whispered in amazement. Now it was time to see what would happen when that whisper became a roar. As their ship accelerated toward human space, carrying both freed prisoners and evidence of hegemony war crimes, Sarah realized that Marcus had been right about one thing: they weren't just going home. They were carrying the proof that humanity belonged among the stars, and that no empire, no matter how vast, could break the human spirit. The war was far from over, but the balance had shifted. The hegemony had learned that humans were dangerous not just because they fought fiercely, but because they inspired others to fight as well. And, in a galaxy full of oppressed species waiting for someone to show them that resistance was possible, that inspiration might prove to be the most powerful weapon of all. The journey home continued, but Sarah knew that this was really just the beginning. The arena had been their proving ground. Now came the real test, showing the galaxy what humans could accomplish when they set their minds to changing the universe itself.